Now, here in the UK, King Charles has thanked everyone who sent him messages of support since his cancer diagnosis.
Britain has entered a moment of intense uncertainty, where streets feel tense, institutions feel stretched, and leadership feels strangely absent. The unrest across cities has revealed not only public frustration, but also a deeper national anxiety about who truly holds authority during crisis. King Charles delivered a message calling for unity, but the country heard it through a lens clouded by fear, exhaustion, and a lingering sense that symbolic reassurance no longer carries weight. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government appears focused on containment rather than connection, leaving people feeling exposed. This summary explores how a single speech illuminated the widening gap between leadership, institutions, and public confidence. The speech that arrived. Too late, King Charles's message, intended as a calming presence in a restless week, landed with a flat thud across the nation. His words, gentle and measured, reflected a traditional understanding of national unity, one that assumes reassurance itself can soothe tension. But modern Britain felt the message arriving not as a timely intervention, but as an overdue gesture delivered after communities had already endured weeks of unrest. Cities facing repeated disruptions, riot incidents, and overstretched police forces needed direction, not sentiment. What the public saw instead was a monarch stepping forward only after the turmoil became impossible to ignore. This timing, more than the content, shaped the reaction. Many felt that Charles spoke from a distance, addressing an imagined national mood rather than the lived one. The result was widespread skepticism, not hostility but resignation. People didn't reject his intentions, they rejected the idea that symbolic comfort could change anything unfolding on the ground. A nation already under strain. The backdrop to Charles's speech was a country worn thin by a series of near-continuous confrontations. Across multiple regions, communities were already living with a slow-burn tension, enough to make daily life feel cautious, even if full riots hadn't erupted everywhere. Shops quietly closed early, schools issued warnings, and families kept children home at dusk. Police admitted privately that they were one incident away from escalation. It created a national mood not of panic, but of fatigue, a sense of bracing for the next spark rather than recovering from the last. This environment made the royal address feel disconnected. The speech spoke of unity, but the streets reflected anxiety. The public mood was shaped not by headlines, but by subtle daily signals. Sirens at odd hours, sudden police presence, and an unspoken understanding that the institutions tasked with keeping order were stretched beyond what they could handle. It was within this fragile tension that Charles's message appeared almost painfully out of sync. A monarchy out of step with the moment. Historically, the monarchy served as a symbolic anchor during national turbulence. Under Queen Elizabeth II, even critics acknowledged that her presence offered a form of emotional steadiness. But this moment exposes how dramatically Britain has changed. The public no longer looks to the crown for guidance, it looks to power, policymaking, and practical leadership. King Charles, despite sincerity, speaks from an institution that now feels peripheral to the country's political storm. His words carry tradition, not authority. They are meant to inspire reflection, yet they struggle to influence the reality unfolding across communities. The gap between symbolic leadership and practical governance has never felt wider. The monarchy isn't rejected, just sidelined by a public that sees its challenges as concrete and immediate. In this climate, ceremonial messages, no matter how well-intentioned, feel like echoes from an era when tradition could soothe unrest. Today's Britain demands more than symbolic reassurance. It demands tangible solutions. The weight now shifts to Keir Starmer. While Charles's speech highlighted the monarchy's limited role, it also emphasized where power now truly sits, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. His government faces immense pressure to respond effectively to the unrest, both publicly and operationally. Yet Starmer's approach, focused on drafting emergency directives, restricting demonstrations, and deploying specialized units, has created a perception of control without connection. People don't necessarily doubt his authority. They doubt his grasp of the moment's urgency. Many question why he remained publicly muted during the most volatile stretch of his leadership. As communities waited for clarity or reassurance, Downing Street appeared cautious, calculating, and distant. This silence widened the gap between government and public mood. Starmer isn't losing support outright, but he is losing presence. In a crisis defined by tension, silence can feel heavier than action. Britain may not expect the monarchy to solve the unrest, but it does expect its prime minister to show the steadiness he promised. The reality on the ground behind the official statements lies a more fragile picture of Britain's public infrastructure. Police forces report depleting emergency budgets, low morale, and exhaustion from continuous deployment cycles. Commanders describe being one incident away from losing control in several regions. These issues rarely make it into televised addresses or political briefings, but they shape the lived experience across communities. Residents sense the strain, not through data, but through slower response times, visible fatigue among officers, and growing inconsistencies in how disturbances are managed. Councils feel similarly overwhelmed, juggling stretched resources and rising anxiety among locals. In many neighborhoods, the unspoken truth is that institutions can no longer guarantee order as confidently as they once could. This disconnect between official reassurance and everyday reality fuels public frustration. People are not demanding perfection. They are seeking honesty. What they see instead is a government projecting stability, while institutions quietly struggle to maintain it. That gap is becoming impossible to ignore. The limits of symbolic leadership. Charles's speech aimed to soothe, but it unintentionally exposed the limits of relying on symbolism during a practical crisis. The monarchy was once a pillar of emotional stability, capable of grounding the nation even when politics felt turbulent. But symbolic authority works only when people feel physically secure. In moments where institutions struggle to maintain order, symbolic reassurance feels insufficient. This isn't a failure of Charles personally, it's a shift in how modern Britain interprets leadership. People want decisions, not poetry. They want action, not sentiment. And when symbolic leadership attempts to fill a role it no longer commands, it highlights the absence of effective political guidance. This moment made clear that tradition cannot substitute for strategy. The monarchy can inspire reflection, but it cannot shape the daily realities of unrest, policing, or public confidence. The nation still respects the crown, but it no longer relies on it for stability. The government's fragile grip. The Starmer administration faces a paradox. It holds the authority to act, yet its actions feel too cautious or too administrative for the urgency of the moment. Emergency measures may prevent escalation, but they do little to rebuild trust. Political leadership requires presence, compassion, and clarity, qualities the public struggles to see in recent responses. Even supporters privately admit that Starmer's leadership feels thinner than it should during a national crisis. Instead of reassurance, people sense a government managing optics, issuing statements designed to convey firmness without fully acknowledging the strain communities experience. This leads to a different kind of instability, not explosive, but simmering. A slow erosion of confidence. People don't expect miracles, but they do expect engagement. Without it, the government's authority feels more procedural than inspirational, more reactive than preventative. And in a tense moment, that distinction matters. The question Britain must now answer. After a month of unrest, a delayed royal speech, and a government struggling to connect with public sentiment, Britain faces a deeper question. Who do people trust to steady the nation? The Crown offers comfort, but not control. The government offers control, but not reassurance. Communities offer resilience, but cannot carry the burden alone. This moment reveals a shift in Britain's identity. not a rejection of its institutions, but a realization that stability must now be earned, not inherited. Leadership must be felt, not performed. The public is no longer asking for unity or symbolic calm. They are asking for credibility, leadership aligned with their lived reality. The unrest may subside, but the underlying uncertainty remains. Britain stands at a crossroads where trust is scarce, patience is thin, and clarity is essential. How the nation moves forward depends not on speeches, but on who can genuinely understand and address the scale of what people are living through.